Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Files Obscura podcast. This episode is brought to you by the Anchor app. If you're like me and probably didn't know where to go to start a podcast or didn't know what to do, then you'll be very glad to hear that the Anchor app is free to download and gives you everything you need available on your phone or your laptop. And you'll be given all the tools you'll need to edit, to play music in the background, to have live guests record your episodes with you, and so much more. Anchor also allows you to distribute your podcast anywhere that you want to be heard, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and the list goes on. I know ourselves, so far, we have at least 7 platforms. And another great thing is that you're able to start making money for your podcast with absolutely no minimum listenership. So if you're interested in starting tomorrow, you can also start recording advertisements tomorrow if you were so interested. But everyone goes at their own pace. All you need to know is that this is everything you need to make a podcast and so much more to help you along the way. It's user-friendly and easy to figure out, as time goes on and you figure yourself out. So all you need to do is go download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, that was anchor.fm to get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Crystal and I host the podcast Alternative Interests with my best friend Elle. We're Washington natives that love true crime, the supernatural, and all things weird, dark, and spooky. Join us every week as we take turns sharing our own twists on the garbage humans that commit crimes, or a paranormal story that we have been obsessing over. Whatever topic we cover, this show is sure to capture all of your alternative interests. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello and welcome, agents and new listeners. If you wish to stay up to date with the latest episodes or any news you might have missed, please follow us on Twitter or Instagram, or consider joining our Facebook page. If you'd like to join in or start in some discussions with other agents, we have a Discord server available to everyone. We also have our episodes up on YouTube, so please consider subscribing and share with your friends. Thank you for your time. Now let's get into this week's case file. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Files Obscura. Now we have kind of a different episode, a more laid back one. I like to look into some geology and try to find some good stories that might be worth the topic, but I came across a bunch of stories that didn't quite neatly fit into one singular episode. So I figured today we're going to kind of throw a few of these favorites that I enjoyed and have a Strange Blue World episode. And today we're going to make a debut of someone new who's going to be joining the team. We're going to talk with my best friend Gabs. How you doing, Gabs?
I'm doing pretty good.
Well, so, you and I, we've known each other for a little over a year at this point, but it feels like we've been best friends for a lot longer.
Yeah, definitely a twin flames thing here.
Oh, absolutely. I know we've had a bunch of personal stories. We could get into it, but this isn't the podcast for it. But, we've had days where we would just be on the couch getting drunk and watching Netflix together.
Weeks.
Oh, yeah, God. Hell, the first night that I, came over to your place and was talking to your roommates, I spent 3 days there.
On the couch,
I had a great time. I wasn't, it was just like, why go home? They're not kicking me out. I'm enjoying it, and no one's complaining. So it's just kind of, we took off from there, and, we've had a lot of great times. You helped push me out of my shell, and unintentionally also helped get me the kick in the butt to get this podcast started, because it's been something that's been on my mind for a while, and something I actually reached out to you 3-4 months ago about this.
A little longer, I think.
Well, the podcast so far has only been 5 minutes long, so somewhere around there.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And
Yeah,
I told you to just go full into it.
Yeah, and I was a little hesitant. I wasn't sure how I wanted to go through things at the time. It was kind of, I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah,
and
but
I
you
think,
never know until you do it.
Of course, but I think so far we've got a pretty good formula going on. People have been loving the conversation. People have been loving the different people that come on, and I'm so glad that I have you on today. Are you ready for today's episode?
I think so.
All right. Well, to kind of preface things for the audience real quick, this is not our normal recording environment, hence why we don't have Vladimir, why we don't have Cece, or even Nathan today. We are actually recording in your apartment, so if there's any audio issues or you hear her cats, I do apologize, but it ain't getting cut out. It's just part of the ride today. So please sit back, enjoy, and I hope it's not too distracting as we talk about our strange blue world today. We picked 3 stories that I personally enjoyed. We got a case from Rockwall, Texas. You know, a little story that I actually first heard about whenever I was watching the History Channel whenever I was younger back in 2012. Then, of course, there's some fun ones around the world, like the Baltic Sea anomaly. Now, that was one of those strange UFO stories that just kind of appeared everywhere, but not a lot of people actually knew a lot about it. So I did a little bit of quick research and got some fun information, but again, it's just not a lot of information that's currently out there. And we'll talk about why that is. And then we got a third story, which is just a really strange place. Nothing mysterious about it, no mysteries, but just the geological processes around this place just create such a unique environment. I felt it was worth talking about at least. So we're going to go ahead and jump into a traditional game that we play every episode, 2 Truths and a Lie. Are you ready?
Go for it.
All right. So I felt it was only fair that we pick a statement from each of these. One of them is going to be a lie. So let's get into the first statement. First statement being, in 1852, 3 men would uncover a strange rock formation whenever they would try to dig a well, and they would come across this wall-like structure that they found buried underground. And this would spark a bunch of debate and a bunch of discussions throughout the years that even today, people still argue about. This is what we're talking about, Rockwall, Texas. Okay?
All right.
You think you got that one?
I think I got that
All right. Statement number 2. Due to a combination of materials and even bacteria infested in the waters of this area, this built the natural rainbow rock formations that you would see in the Danical Depression that give it its beautiful colors. If you want a more relatable example, think some of the geysers that you'll find in Yellowstone, where you got all those colorful orange and greens and blues. You see the same thing here. However, due to a few other geologic processes that happen around this area, the fact that they even have water is kind of amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah. We'll discover. Well, I'll tell you why even water existing here is a little amazing. And then, of course, we have the third statement. You know, the Baltic Sea anomaly has baffled geologists for quite some time. With the very few samples we have been able to bring back, as they were composed of unidentifiable metal alloys. And these alloys, you know, to this day, we don't know where they are after they were uncovered in 2012. We've had them for about 3 years. Scientists, you know, were able to do their material analyzing. I didn't want to go too far into researching that process, but basically break down the material, see what it's made of, and go from there. And this is when they came across 2 elements which they don't recognize. Exactly. Yeah. To the audience that didn't hear, the face she just gave me was priceless as she just processed what I told her. Okay. But you got the 3 statements, right?
I got the 3 statements.
All right. Is there any clarification you need?
No.
Okay. So let's go through it. Let's go through your thought process. Which one do you think's the lie?
I'm definitely going to have to go with the first one.
You think the first one's the lie?
Yeah.
You don't think 3 just random men were digging a well and just found something?
Well, I mean, that's happened in a lot of places.
Of course.
You know? So that seems pretty realistic to me.
Okay. So then why do you think that one's the lie?
Because you didn't explain it in depth like you did with the other 2.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with that.
All right, cool. So is that your final answer?
Man, you're making me
I give everyone this chance. I give everyone this chance.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with that's my final answer.
Then I'm gonna go ahead and lock you in on that one.
All right.
You think the first one's not true. You
think
do
the
not
first
think
one-
3 men uncovered the rock wall in the Rockwall, Texas, when they were digging a well. Yes? I'll give you seem a little uncertain. I'll give you this last chance.
All right, really quick, go through them again.
Okay. Just long story short, 3 men in 1852 would try to dig a well and uncover the rock wall formation that sparked so much debate. Number 2, a combination of different materials and bacteria in the water pools in the Danical Depression would lead to the colorful rock formations that it's partially well known for. Statement number 3, the Baltic Sea anomaly has baffled geologists with samples of unidentified metals found in the samples that they got. Okay? Still gonna stick with the first one?
Still sticking with the first one.
All right, locking you in. Can't change your mind.
Okay.
All right. So let's go into the story of Rockwall. Figured this is going to be a fun one because there's a lot of history, a lot of documented debates going back and forth, and a lot of geologists have researched this and even came to kind of contradictory points, in one time or another. So I decided, let's start from the beginning. Let's look at some facts about this. Rockwall, Texas, population just under 40,000 as of the 2010 census. I believe current estimates put it around 47,000 people. It's part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which is a very large area here in Texas. One I'm not personally fond of. Sorry, Dallas. Nothing against you personally. I just didn't enjoy your city.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. Same thing with San Antonio. But I love Austin. I love Houston. That's my home. But archaeological research of the surrounding areas would reveal, tools of prehistoric natives dating back to, 13,000 to 13,500 years ago, with the discovery of Clovis points, which is a type of napped spearhead, which is originally found in Clovis, New Mexico in the 1930s, which is where they get their name from. Now, there are other types of points that you could find that had different names, like the Folsom Point is another very well-known one. And we use these to help kind of identify how people moved based off the different shapes of these points. Other stone artifacts and Pleistocene mammal remains were also found in the surrounding areas, kind of giving credence to the idea of who was here and what they did. The earliest known culture to inhabit the region were most likely the ancestors of the Caddo Nation. This nation is a confederacy of 7 southeastern Native American tribes that stretched from East Texas, Louisiana, and southern parts of Oklahoma and Arkansas. This culture would derive from the Caddoan Mississippian culture, which I apologize, I'm not very good at names, but I'm trying my best. But this culture was known for constructing huge mounds at several sites. We have a lot of cultures here in America that are known as mound builders. These are one of them, and definitely worth looking into these guys if you want to know more. Okay, that's good because that fucks up, and obviously I'm gonna edit this part out. But real quick, if she gets over that camera, the audio won't pick up as much. It's something weird with my phone. Yeah. But like I was saying, if you want to know more, definitely check out the Spiro Mounds, Spiro. And without getting too much into it, because it's kind of worth its own investigation on its own time, this was the second largest mound in a collection of 30, 40 mounds in this one area. And it's the only burial mound of all of this. So it was kind of something interesting I came across, but since no mounds are found in this area, it's kind of hard to associate anything with from them with this rock wall. Early 1800s, they would be forced to relocate to a reservation in Texas around this area before they were then forced again to move in 1859 to what was then called Indian Territory, which is today called Oklahoma. There have been 21 documented explorations over the years, the first one being in 1852 when 3 men, Benjamin Boydston, Terry Utley Wade, and William Clay Stevenson. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting for a second. It looked like Johnson. They, would be founders of this town, be very well-known figures whenever you look into Rockwall history, as they would go to build a well, and when they dug down to get to the water table level, they instead uncovered, what we now know as the rock wall, which would spark a bunch of debates going on, but this was the first documented case of the wall being excavated, unintentionally. They exposed a portion of it, and, obviously these are just farmers. They don't have the college background to be able to identify this, but basically, when you see, a portion of the wall, which I can show you after we record, it looks like masonry. It looks like these bricks of limestone were cut out, 12 to 14 inches long, very regular. They don't have too many, off shapes. Most of the cuts are roughly right angles. So it begs the question of what actually happened here. Because when you look at other, rock faces that kind of form the same way, they don't have these, regularity in straight lines. They don't have these regularities that you see in different portions of this wall that have been excavated over the years. In 1874, this is when we get the first geologist. His name was Richard Burleson. He examined an exposed portion of the wall and determined that they were igneous occurrences, so naturally, forming rock. But here's the problem. We already know they're not igneous, so he was wrong. In 1901, Dr. Robert T. Hill, which is a Texas geologist, he published an article about the wall and classified the wall as a clastic sand dike. Now, to just kind of understand real quick what a clastic sand dike is a type of clastic dike, which is a seam of sedimentary material that fills an open fracture in rock faces, either by fluidized mixture forced in or through natural processes like wind, water, and people and animals pushing it into these crevices. And then over time, through heat and pressure, you form the sedimentary material. And that's what he's saying is happened here. In 1922, the Dallas News published an article suggesting a different story of how the wall was found. It's basically same idea. Guy was digging a well for his farm, and he uncovered the well. However, he says the author, one W.S. Ader, claims a Mr. Bourne, Bourn, because I kept trying to write Borne because I love the movie. He had 50 acres of property he would farm, and with all this work, he would have to justify building a well onto his property to find it. However, aside from this one tale, I couldn't find any cases that really, backed up this story. In 1925, we move on. Two things happen. In the February of this year, an archaeologist by the name of Count Byron de Prorok, which is Prorok. I have a hard time, pronouncing words with two R's that close together, like rural. It's just kind of mush-mouthed at that point. He would go on to examine some exposed sections over the years and determine that they were made by a prehistoric race. He's the first, smart guy, if you want, to say, no, there's no way that this was natural, because he was pointing out the regularities in the divisions and the cuts and everything. These seem more like masonry works and everything. However, later on that year, Dr. R.S. Hyer, Hyer, actually looked up that one. So he was a former president and professor of physics at SMU. He would conclude that the formation is natural, and pretty much everyone kind of took his word on it from that point on. And by the way, I'm skipping over a lot of other minor things that kind of just confirmed or just went against a lot of these things, but it just didn't feel good reiterating. So if you're wondering why why I'm not mentioning every single one, that's why. In 1933, a man by the name of Martin Kelsey and Harold Denton, with the help of one J.S. Mason, who was a Rockwall County surveyor, would make the first map detailing the known 11 outcroppings of the sections of the wall. So when I was looking online and looking for a complete map of what people were looking at, this was one of the first things I found, which is really interesting because I could see from a geologist standpoint of why it just looks like natural formations and faults, because there was a theory about fault lines that were in the area, so that's where this happened and came into being. But however, there was another researcher who said that the fault lines that they were referring to has no evidence proving that they come down this far into Rockwall to matter. So it's kind of a gray area for conversation right there. I couldn't personally give you my own opinion because I don't feel like I'm educated enough in geology to give you that informed opinion. Yeah, like this guy Hyer, he pretty much went with the thesis of, no, it's just sedimentary rock. We're not going to worry anything past that. skipping over a lot of people going back and forth throughout the years, either confirming or denying whether they were just researchers or they were actual PhD professors and stuff, because there was quite a few. They would go back and forth, saying this or that or the other. Sometimes, in one instance in the 70s, even Rockwall actually held an open county fair for kids and students to go and look at the wall. And they would hold this fair and have as many as 70 people a day sometimes, come to see these exposed portions, which is kind of impressive for this tiny town. Yeah, well, not just that, just this tiny town. To this day, it's really tiny still. Yeah. But we're going to jump to 1996 to an architect by the name of John Lindsay. He conducted a study of previous excavations, gathering everybody else's throughout the years since 1852, all their observations and everything. And he would determine, quote, after compiling past records, data, and documents, including recent studies and research, evidence of prehistoric structure being built by man is mounting, unquote. So he's not outright saying he believes man built it, but however, he says that over the years of everything he's seen, it's becoming very convincing, which I feel is a very safe way and appropriate way to handle, saying something like this when over the years it's become so controversial. Yeah. It's almost 200 years since we first found it, and we still don't have a consensus of what we agree it is. Skipping a few more years again, we're going to jump to 2012 to that America Unearthed show on the History Channel I was talking to you about. The one I witnessed, the one that got me interested in. This episode aired with researchers going to a particular spot in the northeast side of Rockwall County, where he would take core samples from these stones, measure the magnetic alignment. He would measure certain types of materials that you would find in sedimentary rock, and just basic geology examination. And this examination proved that the stones were natural. But all that proved is that the stones themselves were naturally formed. They weren't mason work, so they weren't bricks or anything like that. So I still want to make the argument that it could have been manipulated, because a lot of people say that, yes, these may be naturally formed. However, it's not to say man didn't come in at some point and added to it or used it. Because there's cases of people claiming that they found, stuff like windows and doorways and arches and stuff like this in the wall, but we don't have any scientists to have backed up these statements. So it's still kind of, you got to take what you get. There's just not a lot of research that's done about this place. There's not a lot of people who care enough to question and to prove it or not, because most people just kind of go with the accepted theory of everything they read and say, yes, it's just a plastic dike, filled with sand. They say like a specific, like almost like a slurry mix. What fell into these cracks that would form. Yeah, that's about the rock wall itself. But I did find one more interesting thing about Rockwall. It's kind of happened last week, actually. On September 3rd, last Thursday of 2020, reports would indicate officers would respond to a woman who had escaped a second-story window after being held there against her will. SWAT would then later on arrive on scene, and 3 more women would exit the home and be questioned. As of right now, no one has been charged, and we don't know where the owner of the home is. We don't know. They haven't released the names of these women, and I couldn't find any more stories. But with other stories about women and children who have escaped entrapment over the years, from people, it kind of blew my mind to just kind of stumble onto that story. Unrelated, but I felt it was important because it's maybe a story I want to follow, for future episodes. Yeah. But yeah. So we can kind of say right off the bat, you were wrong. Yeah.
No.
Easily wrong, because that was one of the first things I found. I was like, all right, let's go to the first source of this, and it's spilled out there. The Rockwall Historical Society actually does a really good job of documenting everything, because the guy who runs the Rockwall Historical Museum and the site, he really believes that the wall was, built. He doesn't believe it just formed. So he really wants to get a scientist to do a proper excavation. However, at this point, most of the wall is under private land, and then you gotta, get permission from people to excavate their land, and you can see where that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, is that going to happen anytime soon? Probably not. I don't imagine it being, an answer we're going to get it, But overall, rock wall is an interesting story for me, 'cause it's not something you hear about every day. When do you just hear about entire walls just being buried? You don't. You hear them being erected, Great Wall of China, Trump's stupid wall that's only lasts 3 miles or something like that. Yeah, it definitely doesn't cover the entire Mexican border. Not at all.
Not even close.
Which, by the way, little caveat, I try not to be political, but one of the things I love is seeing all the Mexicans who can either just fit through the bars or are able to climb over. I've watched hundreds of those videos. Oh, God, it makes me laugh. But let's go ahead and move over to Africa. Specifically, we're going to go to Ethiopia, because this is where we're going to find the Danakil Depression. Now, Danakil Depression is hell. Now, I was born in San Bernardino County. I was raised pretty much in Death Valley, as my dad worked there with the U.S. Army at the time, and so I'm used to that heat. Now, on average, you'll hear everyone say, the Death Valley is the hottest place on Earth, the Mojave Desert, the hottest place on Earth. However, on average, the Danakil Depression is actually the hottest place on Earth, with average temperatures being around 34 degrees Celsius, which is almost 94 degrees Fahrenheit. That's almost your internal body temperature, which is on average. The highest it can get is on average 117 in June and July, and the coldest it gets on average during the day happens in January and February, and that's only 86 degrees. However, it's very dry. It's not like how we suffer here in the humidity. It's very, very dry.
Well, if it's naturally 117 degrees, that's easily enough to kill a person.
Oh, yeah.
130 degrees is all it takes.
But heat alone ain't the only threat here, which, surprising, this place is a very big tourist destination, and it really shouldn't be. And I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, that's 9 degrees hotter than it is on average in Death Valley, just for context, for people who want that. For some context, it helps to understand that I'm trying to remember the names of the rivers that were in there, because I didn't write it down, because I just looked them up and I'm blanking out. But there are major rivers that flow through the Danakil Depression don't even make it to the ocean. Yeah, it's so hot, these rivers boil off before they can get to the river, and it just dries out, thus leading to, dry lake beds and everything, and this will lead to a lot of salt deposits, which will become important to a lot of people's livelihoods in this area. But to kind of understand what's going on, I looked into the geology of this area. I looked into, tectonic plates. I looked into kind of the formations of some of the more famous parts of this area. And I learned that part of what makes this area so extreme is that there's a mantle plume that's forming underneath the Danakil Depression. Now, what that does is that it's forcing jets of, just boiling, scorching hot magma through the crust and everything, and it's pushing up underneath these plates, and so it's pushing these plates away. The Nubian, the Arabian, and the Somalian plates are being pushed away, and in its wake is being left this depression. That's why we call it, because it's lower than the sea level, and this is what's formed in this area. And when you got hot magma boiling up underneath, which leads to volcanoes and stuff, you have a dry area, filled with salt and briny water that does exist and is left over. You're starting to create a very extreme environment of all kinds of levels. You have the acidity that's going crazy. You have the heat that's going crazy. You have the geology that's trying to kill you. It's a lot of crazy stuff, but it's so pretty to look at because they have some of the most beautiful rock formations I've ever seen, like they were in Yellowstone, where I was talking about how you had those bacteria that discolor the rocks and everything in the water and all that. That's part of what is leading to all these discolorations of the rock. But you also have stuff like the high concentration of sulfur. You have different salts. You have iron deposits and halophiles, which is a bacterial extremophile that does very well in salty environments. Unlike us pathetic humans, where we can't even drink 3% salt water.
That would actually be really interesting if that place got hot enough and caught fire. Because it would be blue.
Yeah.
With all the salt, it would be blue fire. That would actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, it would. But
the fact that it's a tourist place.
Well, we'll get to that. It's a tourist place because it's so dangerous. It's the thrill seeker kind. Yeah. Which, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, you're stupid. Because there's political turmoil in this area too. So, I mean, there have been numerous cases of people being just headshot and eviscerated and taken and abused by people in this area. Because this land borders Eritrea, which is very... I didn't look into Eritrea, I'll be honest. But from the context of everything else I've written, it seems like an area with a lot of political discourse.
So what you're telling me is if the environment doesn't kill you...
The people will.
The people will.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm telling you. Because anytime somebody goes out there, it's highly, highly recommended you get the military or you get someone who's got like 20 plus years of experience in this area.
So what you're telling me is this takes money.
Yes, it takes a lot of money. So that's why I love the photography. The volcanic activity in this area is something totally unique to this area, and you won't find it. You'll find close examples, but not any that are quite like this one. Because they have a shield volcano called Erta Ale, which is the only one that I know of that's below sea level that reaches a total height of 613 meters, which is like over 2,000 feet tall. But again, it's under sea level because of the depression, with the longest existing lava lake. This lava lake first formed in 1906 and has been a constant staple since. The adventurous type that like to travel the region are, like I was telling you earlier, they are advised, with them and their tour guides and everyone, if they are interested in viewing the lake, it's best to view it at the dark of nights and prepare to leave before the heat gets too intense in the morning, because the heat travels very fast. But at night you are said to see a variety of, beautiful displays of colors and explosive actions because of the different salts and sulfurs that bleed into this lava lake. And just, I've seen some of the videos of it. God, is it gorgeous? Like screensaver worthy stuff. That's how I describe it. But granted, I don't want to stand next to it. No. Because even the air.
Fumes.
Oh yeah.
Alone would be enough.
Yeah, around the lava lake, of course, obviously. But it's not just around the lava lake, because the air at some points can be too much at times for people to breathe normally, and they require gas masks because samples and tests have shown extremely high concentration of chlorine gas in the air. Yeah, you're literally gassing yourselves here. And there's even spots, I believe, that are blanket CO2 areas where people, without knowing better, would go down, maybe to relieve themselves for a moment. They don't realize they just walked into an environment with no oxygen, and they suffocate and die. Yeah, and there have been pictures and videos of animals I've seen where like a bird would see an animal that's dead and think, oh, that's food, and go down, and in 3 seconds it would just collapse and die too, and it'd just be like this whole grayish black graveyard. Yeah, but it's only like in certain locations. But yeah, that's just one of the many things trying to kill you.
It really suck if you took a piss in there and made mustard gas.
Oh yeah, that'd be something. I didn't even think about that one when I was writing this. But
kind of off to the side.
Right.
Oh, no.
You just gassed yourself.
Yeah.
As what is it? DJ Khaled said, "You played yourself." But this, however, hasn't stopped many people, of course, from traveling just to visit the area. Like I told you, however, don't be a fool. This area is near constant threat of attacks, like I was telling you about. Many guards, guides, and guests have been killed in the area, and it's best to find a guide very well prepared and trained for this environment. I can't stress that enough, because there was a a German. I can't remember if he was just a photographer or he was a full-fledged journalist, but he was taking pictures of the area and trying to get stuff for his story. When his tour guide said that he just collapsed with a hole in his head. He didn't hear the bullet. He didn't see where it came from. He just collapsed and died because he was shot from a distance. There was a story from like 2017 where a group of tourists went and they didn't have a very experienced tour guide, and a group of pirates came and harassed them, and 5 of them were beaten, 2 of them were raped. Just horrible, horrible stuff. And there's story after story after story of this.
I just want to know what kind of person is like, yeah, I'll guide you in there. Easy, no problem.
Well, we'll get to that, because still, even with all these dangerous conditions, those in this area often travel to the region to mine the salt, as in early Ethiopian history, the salt from this region was equatable to gold. They would actually use this salt as currency. From the salt beds, like in Lake Asale, which is Asale. So I hope I pronounced that one right. And all this is also done by hand. They don't have they don't have power tools like we do or anything. Like one of these tools that I saw the guy used is a stick that's about the length of my arm. My arm's 6 feet long, so almost 2 meters long. At the very end of it is a very sharpened, iron piece or a rock, and he uses that to cut slabs out. And they take these slabs and they put them on camels, and they take their whole camel caravan all the way across this massive trek just to get back home. There's a few very, very tiny towns. One being a ghost town called Dallo, where there's almost nobody there anymore. There's a military base in the opposite direction. Very few people, but it's paved now, so a lot more people travel on it. And this is how people still, get by, making their livelihoods in this area. They would often be people who would warn, other tourists and everything to stay away from this area. However, when you got researchers who are interested in this area, who want to know more about what's going on, you kind of can't stop them. The pursuit of knowledge, is a thirst we're never going to quench, which is important to know that despite all these harsh conditions that one faces here, monumental discoveries in this area have forever changed our understanding of human evolution. Because this is where we found Lucy. Yes,
Like
the Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. She's named after the area, the Afar, region, which is where the Danakil Depression is located. Yeah, and a little quick fact for those who may not know. Lucy's named after a Beatles song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is where Lucy was found. But this is also where the oldest confirmed skeleton related to us has been found. Now her name is Ardi, which is Ardipithecus ramidus, which is her genealogical name.
They found her not too long ago. Right?
Yeah, they found her
last
in
year whenever they found the newest skeletons.
I heard something last year, but I haven't researched it too much. But yeah, Ardi was found this century for sure. I know because it was big news when they found Ardi. But since then we haven't really heard much about it. But Ardi is the oldest confirmed skeleton that we have that we can say pretty much is related to us. But we would also discover, some of the oldest proofs of stone tools and masonry that was used at this time. I shouldn't have said masonry because it wasn't. But oldest stone tools and everything that they would use that they could directly tie to, Lucy's people and everything being over 3 million years old. So yeah, it's just, and they were able to prove that in June of 2010. So it's just, crazy, stories happening one after another. What was it? Oldest ancestors we found. Yeah, just reconfirming a lot of what I wrote. But yeah, like to think about the cradle of civilization, we know it's in Africa and everything, but to think, all the life that still flocks around this are, I don't think you can argue that it's a horrible region to live in, I definitely like my AC. I definitely like living next to a lake that I can enjoy, the water. Well, because of where I used to live.
I was about to say, there ain't no lakes around here.
No, not around here, but,
I mean, around here, where we're at currently, there's the...
No, but where I live, it's a 10-minute drive to the lake.
Yeah.
So I definitely enjoy the comforts I have, to say the least. I'm not gonna say, oh, it could be better and shit like that when I'm comparing this to people who literally mine salt for a living by hand. I'm not gonna do that, you know.
Their hands must be so chapped.
Oh, I've seen pictures of their hands. It looked, for those who don't know, me personally, I, for a period, used to work for a company called Wazoo Survival Gear, and I would be the guy who had handmade a lot of their products. And when I would come home and see the calluses all over my hands and just feel the crunch, almost, the literal crunch of my fingers moving because of it, I thought that was bad. Now, when you look at these guys' hands, it's like I got a pedicure or a manicure. It's just like, it's indescribable what these guys go through.
As a kid, I used to make sugar and salt scrubs
Yeah.
by hand, mix my own oils, make the bases.
Yeah.
And every time I'd be doing a salt scrub, oh, my hands would come out bleeding and broken. And so painful.
Yeah, that does not sound enjoyable.
No.
But yeah, that's just, a few interesting facts of the Danica Depression. There's a lot more that's worth looking into. There's a lot of political turmoil that you can look in the area, especially how it relates to Ethiopia. You could look at more of the geology and how these, intricate geological formations, how they interact with each other and give the Danica Depression its unique touristy attractions, if you want to call it that, because that's how people see it. But a lot of it, if you're that kind of nerd, it's really fascinating, because I am that kind of nerd. I love it so much. But before I talk about it to the ends of the earth, let's move on to our last topic. We're going to go to the Baltic Sea anomaly. Now, there's not too much about the Baltic Sea anomaly, because honestly, if you accept what the researchers say, it's just really mundane. However, the speculations that came out of it was very, very fun and very, very fascinating. In June of 2011, the self-described treasure hunters of Sweden's Ocean X team, they would be the people who would take some sonar images in the center of the Gulf of Bothnia. They would be the guys who created the very famous picture of the Baltic Sea anomaly, the grainy image of what basically looks like the Millennium Falcon underwater. Yeah, that thing. These are the guys who found that, or who took those pictures. One specific image, like I said, it looked like a very strange craft measuring over 200 feet in diameter. And other features that people claim to see, would be ramps, stairways, columns, hallways. Many people would come out and make artistic depictions of what they thought this was. You can see a ton of them just by Google searching, the Baltic Sea anomaly. Some of them are really good. Some of them are really out there. Like, one of them really made an attempt to try to make it look like a spaceship that had, eroded away. And I'm like, I appreciate it, but
ancient alien guys live for.
Exactly, right? We're not Georgios Tsoukalos, but sorry, I just got reminded of a Halloween that I did one year where I dressed up as him.
Did you walk around going aliens with the hands?
The first thing I did is I took, my crappy, leather duster and everything, and I had the tie on and everything. I actually gelled up my hair. No, not gelled, hairsprayed. Because you see how long my hair is. It goes down to my chin. It's about that long. Now imagine I hairsprayed that crap up.
Oh, gosh.
Did you
do the streaks?
Huh?
Did you do the streaks?
I tried.
Oh,
but this was also before the gray streaks were really, prominent. This was, height of Ancient Aliens, when he's that's when the meme was born. So there's a really old picture that I have to dig for you. That is me just doing the famous pose.
My dad watches that unironically.
Oh God,
I'm serious that we are the aliens.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's
right?
not. I wouldn't say it's not true, because
I wouldn't say it's not possible.
Well, I don't know, because if you want to dip into metaphysics and stuff, which is definitely something we're going to cover in the future, there are those who do believe we straight up came from Mars, and they would point to these weird pyramids that are on there, and then we have them here.
And now there's a random sphere that one of the Mars rovers found.
Yeah,
it's totally random.
Yeah, I know, and it's so worth the discussion, but
not right now.
Exactly, another episode. So back to the Baltic Sea anomaly. A second dive would occur in 2012, and these researchers would try to get a clear image. But this is where, we discovered the mysterious electrical interferences. When you get to a certain point, your equipment stops working. So then they would go down and collect some samples. However, of course, whenever you come back to the surface and say, yeah, we couldn't take pictures, there was weird magnetic shit going on, you're going to spark fuel to that, already existing fire of this weird geological formation you found. This is when, people were, saying it's a crashed or submerged UFO, it's probably a portal of some kind, or even, a Stonehenge type structure. We don't know. Which, honestly, out of the three, is, for me, the most plausible, Stonehenge structure. Because you do see stuff like columns, you do see stuff that looks like staircases. Yes, I will accept, it could be, natural, and if we get 100% proof to say it is, I'm not going to be shocked. But at the same time, if we get proof that says, no, like, look at these inscriptions, this was definitely built by people were definitely here, I'm not going to be shocked. It's just kind of a 50-50 coin right now. It's just an anomaly, which is the perfect name for it. But the samples I was talking about, the samples that these people would collect from the stone surfaces, they would be analyzed, indicating evidence of naturally formed granites. Why did I say that word so weird? Granites, gneisses, and sandstones. Three different types of naturally occurring rocks that you would expect to see in this area. They even found some basaltic rock, which they said was strange but not completely uncommon, because this area is commonly known to have been affected and shaped by glacial movements during the Ice Age and everything. So rocks would drift from one area and be deposited in others. There's one, I don't remember right off the top of my head where it is, but there's one kind of famous formation where you got these massive boulders that are sitting on top of these mountain peaks that are basically like, if you imagine a sharpened pencil to a point, you got, a jawbreaker sitting on top of it. That's what it basically is. And you got like hundreds of stones like this, I believe. I tried looking into it, but because I don't remember the country it's from, it was kind of hard for me to find. But it's definitely something I want to look into more. But I know for a fact that these are confirmed to have been placed here because of glacial formations. When the ice melted away and these rocks and tops, would fall on top of the mountaintops, erosion would happen over the years, and you got just these massive balls on top of these, very jagged, pointed mountaintops and stuff like that.
We actually have one here in America that's called the Balancing Rock. It's in Utah, I believe, in Monument Valley.
Yeah, I know the Balancing Rock, and it's I believe I've personally seen it, but I was like 4 or something.
I've seen it a couple times.
So yeah, it's like that's a very great example of this kind of action happening. So with glacial movements and even post-glacial movements with, water, coming in and eroding and doing extra stuff, most people pretty much agree that there's nothing truly strange around this. To explain, the magnetic anomaly, I could even just say there's probably a massive deposit of iron or something in the area that messes with it. It's completely possible. We have evidence of it in many other locations around the world, and I'm not going to be shattered by that revelation. It is strange, of course, but completely plausible. But these were 3 topics or 3 geological formations that I felt were really worth the dive talking to, because they may not be unexplainable, but they are most certainly interesting. I definitely fell into the rabbit holes of all these kind of little caveats, especially with Rockwall and the Baltic Sea anomaly, all the little rabbit holes of people's conspiracies and stuff. Really fun to kind of like just laugh at some points, but some of them kind of make you think, because some of these guys, they're not stupid. Like with Rockwall, you had geologists say, no, like this was made by prehistoric man, or it's a very convincing argument at least. When you got, educated people saying that, it kind of makes you want to wonder. And then, of course, because I'm a nerd, I just love things geology when it came to the Danakil Depression. And there's a lot more stuff going on in that area that's totally worth it. And some of the pictures are gorgeous. So, on top of the other 3 that I wanted to include in here, we might make this a 2-parter and add some more places that I wanted to. Because, there's all kinds of other stuff I found, such as like the Michigan Stonehenge. There is I'm trying to remember exactly what it was called, but there's a something in Russia, Siberia specifically, where people claim to have found these alien constructions, and I believe they refer to them as lighthouses. People have gone inside, but when they get to this area, their equipment stops working. They feel nauseated. Some people don't come back. There was even one report saying that one of these structures erected itself out of the ground and fired fire out of this ball that came out of it and shot a meteor.
Sounds like new Russian military tactics.
This report comes out of the 1800s.
Ooh,
exactly.
Fun.
Because guess where I found out about this? Ancient aliens. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of people do attribute these lighthouses, as I'm going to address them right now, as, alien defense systems. So I thought that would be fun to try to research and look into more. And then, of course, you have a bunch of other stuff that's totally worth talking about. God, K2 is one of the most, it's the second tallest mountain, but I believe it's labeled as the most dangerous one for a reason. Because of it's steeper climb, more people have died due to hypothermia or falling off rock faces because of it. Everest is fun, but everyone knows Everest. There's a similar formation like we were talking about with Rockwall that people have found off the coast of Japan, where it's this massive stone monument that looks too perfectly cut to be, naturally made. So people think it's the temples of some ancient Japanese culture, long forgotten about. So there's always more things, worth diving into. But if people enjoy this, like I said, we'll definitely do a second part, But yeah, that's it for today. How did you like the stories? How did you like the tales?
I like conspiracy theories, and I always love a good story of archaeologists fighting each other to find out who's right. That's one of my favorite things.
Oh yeah. Because you got to argue the truth to find the truth.
That's true.
And when you got evidence that doesn't kind of neatly line up with everything you've been thinking of for a while, you kind of got to have some fun with it. It's called for, in my opinion. Granted, take everything with a grain of salt, but
I just want to hear the diss tracks of each of these guys. Like, no, it's made by man. No, it's made by the earth. Like, there were some diss tracks in there.
Oh, I don't doubt it. People's thesis papers and everything, and then they'll add that little, quick notes in the margin. Fuck this asshole. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I found this. How did he miss this? And he's an idiot. Whatever. So I wouldn't doubt that at some point that might have happened, because I did not personally read their handwritten documents, obviously. But I read what was written in their reports, and I read the summary that other people have collected, and I did want to look more into kind of the political history that's surrounding the whole Danica Depression area, but then once I opened that can of worms, I realized just how big that was, and I don't need this to be a 4-hour episode. but yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Kind of disappointed there wasn't more with the Baltic Sea anomaly. I was really hoping there was something I didn't know.
Yeah.
And no, it was pretty mundane. Most people agree it's like there's nothing really strange about it. Yes, you got conspiracy websites that will come out claiming, "Oh, we found this new thing," and scientists aren't talking about it. I'm like, where's your source, man? Where's your source?
It's because they get mind wiped by the government.
Oh, that's true. That's right. We've got these birds.
Yeah, the birds, man.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they aren't real, man.
You stare into their eyes and you forget the last 10 minutes.
How do you think we got the Big Brother state? They're not birds. They're biological incognito radio drones. That's what they are.
That's why they need batteries in England.
Have you ever wondered why birds look at you cross? It's because they're trying to examine you. That's what it is. It's the cameras. It's trying to adjust your face.
Have you ever seen a bird break? Because I watched a bird break. One time I was in a parking lot and there was a french fry on the ground and I was like, a bird's probably gonna go get that. And so a bird landed and it just cocked its head to the side, opened its mouth and stopped. And it stopped long enough for me to get into my car, find my phone in my mess of a purse, pull it out and take a picture, and it was still there at the end of it.
Why?
It ran out of batteries, man. It landed and ran out of batteries.
Fair enough. That reminds me of like the whole celebrity replacement conspiracy, and then we go with Al Roker. You know what video I'm about to discuss about, where he's on Good Morning America, and then he just has that moment where he's listening to everyone, and then just snaps to the camera, and he has a really weird face going on. A lot of people are saying, "Oh no, this is the clone downloading his new instructions." Yeah, or whatever it may be. It's like, oh god, are you serious? Like, I know I'm joking about the birds, but people actually believe this, and that's what blows my mind. And it's on the table worth talking about, you know, the whole celebrity clone conspiracy. It's something on the table. I just personally, it's just so out there. I just don't want to tackle it just yet. I'm not ready to open that can of crazy. But yeah, it's like that, and the Fort Knox one. Oh god, that was just as bad. Oh, but yeah, it's just a lot of fun places. Not a lot of time to talk about them. I wish I could do these specific places, you know, the justice they deserve. But this isn't a geology podcast. That kind of sounds boring, but I'd also be the asshole that listens to that every week. But yeah, this was fun. I'm so glad we got you on this episode. I'm so glad you agreed to do this, because I know we were already talking about other episodes that might be fun to do, and I kind of got you to the point. It's like, got a good idea, shut the fuck up, because I don't want to hear it yet. I want to, you know, have you teach me like I try to do with these stories and tales that I find, because you have mentioned a lot of good things that I'm really intrigued to hear, and I really want to see what I can learn from you. But I can't wait to have you on more episodes. I can't wait to have you mingle with everybody else that we have on the team, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. Just real quick, is there anything personal you would like to plug? You know, any streaming sites or anything that you do, or no?
No, not right now.
Okay, well, as always in the future, I know I've talked about it in depth, all kinds of stuff that I wanted to do, and I don't talk about it on the podcast. But there's a lot of things I've been interested in trying to do in the future, and I know you've been interested with some things I've mentioned in the past. So we'll see where things go. But before I just start rambling on in my personal life, let's go ahead and nip this in the bud right here. This has been a great episode, and I can't wait to see you guys again next week. Bye.
Bye.